Okay, so you're here to join me, and who am I? All right. My name is Eva Rosenberg. I am the Internet's tax mama. I have been running a free site that answers questions for tax professionals and the general public since 1999. So we've answered thousands of questions. Nobody's going to ask you for money, but if you have questions, you can post them over here where it says taxmama.com/ask questions. Anytime you actually want to receive an answer, that is where you want to be posting, because that's the only place I'm going to answer questions. Do not email them to me if you want an answer, because I get too much junk in my emails, and when I get something legitimate, I lose it. What's so special about me? Well, first of all, I have been teaching the EA exam course since I started teaching it and created the course at UCLA about 30 years ago. Been teaching it on my own out in the world and online since 2004. And I was named 2021 and 2022's top tax resolution educator by my CPE, and 2022's one of the top most influential women in accounting. And one of the reasons is because I spend so much time and energy advocating for you. So I spend all this time and energy advocating for you, for the EA exam candidate, fighting your battles for you. And a lot of my time is also spent working with the IRS on a couple of different committees to bring to their attention problems, systemic problems in forms, in the website, in operations. And every once in a while, somebody at the IRS actually takes my advice, and somebody at Prometric takes my advice. I am the author of a couple of best-selling books. One of them is Small Business Taxes Made Easy, which all of my students get a copy of. And just so you know, I did not pitch any publishers. McGraw-Hill called me and offered me the book contract. And when they called on my answering machine, I thought they were calling to sell me stuff, so I almost didn't call them back. But both McGraw-Hill and Humanics called and asked me to write these books for them. So this is the information about where you can get your questions answered for free. This is what the Tax Mama website looks like. We have the latest tax quips. So every week or so, I'm trying to stay on a weekly schedule. I post announcements and explanations about what's going on at the IRS. And there's a link to ask your question. So there's a link at the top. There's a link to ask your question. And you've probably heard me on the radio around the country and seen information where I've been quoted in articles. In fact, I was just quoted in an entire article about the 5 habits of my wealthiest clients. So this is what we're going to cover today. We're going to talk about what an enrolled agent is and who qualifies for the exam and why you want to be an enrolled agent. And we're going to go through the logistics of some of those things. So I'm not going to read you this, but theoretically, if you have the handout and you click on these titles, it should take you straight to that part of the handout. So what is an enrolled agent? Let me tell you, the IRS considers us the highest credential that they offer. And no disrespect to CPAs and attorneys, but enrolled agents are the only tax professionals that absolutely have to take all of their continuing education in the area of taxation. We have similar continuing education requirements for CPAs and attorneys, but they don't have to do it in tax. And so There are two advantages to being an enrolled agent. You become a really good expert in the area of taxation, and in order to pass the EA exam, you have to learn how to do tax representation. You have to learn how to help your clients deal with IRS notices, balances due, and audits. And believe it or not, a lot of CPAs who've been practicing for many years or who work in corporate don't know how to do those things. They're not required to have that training. Enrolled agents are. So there is another advantage that enrolled agents have over CPAs and attorneys because they can only practice in their own state. So wherever their license is, and sometimes they have licenses in multiple states, they can practice with respect to those state agencies. All of the states in the United States recognize enrolled agents, so we're mobile. We can work anywhere, we can live anywhere, but please understand that for CPAs and attorneys, they can work with the IRS anywhere in the country. So they don't have that drawback with the IRS, and neither do we. So they just can't work with clients who have state problems in any state that they are not in. Why should you become an enrolled agent, and why should you do that now? Well, it's all over the news, right? The IRS just got a budget of $80 billion handed to them finally by Congress. First of all, please don't think it's a lot of money because it's being doled out to them over 10 years, all right? And a lot of the money is going to update their really archaic computer systems and operations, but they are hiring 80,000 new people within this time frame. They just hired 5,000 people to deal with customer service during the end of last tax season that just theoretically closed, except for the states that are disaster areas that have several more months before their tax season ends. But they are putting a lot of energy into training examiners, auditors, and collections officers, and focusing on getting them out into the field to collect money from the wealthier taxpayers who've been avoiding paying taxes. So yes, we're going to be very valuable in helping people take care of problems. We're going to save lives. And yes, we can help with state problems, not just IRS problems. But bear in mind, if you're dealing with a state that you are not familiar with, you're going to have to research their rules in order to talk to the state agencies. So don't just blunder into that. One of the tools that we're going to give you as part of our class is the Taxbook Web Library, and it has an all states edition, so you have a starting point. There are more opportunities than ever to get hired as an enrolled agent or to get used, have your talents used as an enrolled agent. So if you have your own practice, you can increase the services you provide to your clients. I know a lot of people who are tax professionals, tax preparers, even CPAs, who send out their clients when they have audits or they have IRS balances due. They don't know how to do that. And when you send your clients to somebody else, very often you lose the client. And I know I've built a practice on people sending me their clients. I try to send them back, but once they meet you and they're charmed by you, they don't want to go back to the person who referred them. So for those of you who become enrolled agents, you're able to work with more clients. You're able to work with them remotely. You're able to do more work with them. And when they move out of the area, you're able to continue to work with them. In fact, you can work with clients anywhere in the world. We have several graduates who are enrolled agents working in Australia, England, Europe, Mexico, all over the place. So you are seriously mobile and can work from anywhere in the world. And if you have family in another country and you want to spend 3 or 4 months at a time, you can work from there and set up a practice there in that country and maybe write off most of your travel. In many instances, especially these days, we're able to work with the tax agencies online. So we're able to work with the IRS, with the state, and with part of that $80 billion the IRS is getting, they are trying to improve their online interactive systems so that we can do a lot more on our own and be able to upload information and be able to communicate than we ever used to be able to do in the past, something we have been begging for forever. Mark wants to know if most EAs work independently in their own practices. Many do, but there are jobs available. There are so many jobs available. When I started out, nobody really had heard of enrolled agents, and especially not the companies, the big accounting firms and so forth. These days, the big accounting firms are hiring. And by the way, everybody I know is desperate to hire competent tax help. Okay. Everybody I know is desperate to hire help and they cannot find good people. So there are jobs all over the place. And people who have been outsourcing their work to the Philippines or to India, some of their clients are not happy with that. They would rather help work with somebody who has a practice here in the United States. They have recourse. They don't really have recourse if somebody messes up or steals their identity in some foreign country, but they'd much rather know that there is somebody here. And many companies, though, are very open, especially because of COVID. They're very open to hiring people to to work remotely. And I'm speaking dyslexically. Okay, so with many of these companies, you'll be able to do IRS and state collections representation, IRS and state audits remotely. A lot of the tax preparation software is online, so you can have a tax practice. Someone can have a tax practice and have people logging in, working for them, making entries directly into the system. So none of it's proprietary. Everything is under the control of the firm. And so they are very able to hire people to work both remotely or in person. And just about all the accounting software tools are both online and on desktop. But if people are working remotely, and many are, they're able to work for the company and just log straight into the system without having to have the client stop what they're doing. So there are a lot of opportunities in companies, and many of you have downloaded that handout about how to make a living as an EA, that PowerPoint PDF file, and that gives you more specific information about how to improve your prospects as an employee with a current job and make you more valuable to your boss, or how to start and build your own practice, or how to get a job. So we've got tools for you there. So the question is, how do you become an enrolled agent? Well, you could do it what I call the easy way, is you could work for the IRS for 5 years. And that's not quite as bad as you might think. Or you could do it the hard way. You can do it the way I did it, and many of you have done. You pass 3 very difficult IRS examinations. Many CPAs I know have told me they weren't able to pass that without all of the additional study. You have to pass a background check. So the IRS or the federal government is going to do a background check, and they're also going to look at criminal history and things like that. And you're going to have to pass a review of your tax compliance history. So it's very important that to be an enrolled agent, to be entrusted with being able to represent clients before the IRS, you have to be reliable. So they want people who have filed all of their tax returns and paid all of their taxes. So if you haven't done that, you're going to need to get your act back together and catch up on those things. And I have helped some people who were in arrears on some of these things be able to get into compliance and convince the IRS that maybe they are worth risking the EA credential. And those people that I've helped have done wonderful things for their community. So far, my judgment has been pretty good. What other qualifications do you need? Well, first of all, when it comes to education, you don't need a college degree. So if you're interested in starting right now, you don't have to go to college for 2 or 4 years first. All you have to do is learn a lot about tax law representation and procedure. So you're going to need to know a lot. The age is 18 minimum. Used to not have a minimum age, but when they set up the PTIN system, the prepare a tax ID number, they set the age at 18 minimum. Because we've had some students who passed the exam at 16 before they set that age. Do you need to be a US citizen? You do not. You don't need to be a citizen. You don't need to have a green card. Some of the materials on how to get your PTIN and things like that are going to be more difficult if you don't have a social security number, but it can be done, and they do have provisions for that. You can live anywhere in the world, so you don't have to be a US person to sit for the exam, and there are testing sites in several other countries. Back to compliance. I can't emphasize that enough. If you're not in compliance and you have not filed all of your tax returns and paid all of your taxes, you are going to have a problem and possibly not be able to get approved. The most important thing that you need to start with right now is your PTIN. And the PTIN is a preparer tax ID number. In order to legally get paid to prepare tax returns, you must have registered with the IRS and gotten this number. In order to sit for the EA exam, you have to get your PTIN, and that's going to be the number that they're going to use internally at Prometric to identify you and your progress through the examination process. So if you don't already have a PTIN, I'm suggesting that you do that when we're done today. You can sign up online and it's just a few minutes. There is a small fee. It's $30.75. It's actually something that went down, and it is renewed every single year. So it gets renewed just about every November or December. One of the benefits of getting your PTIN, aside from the fact that you can legally sign tax returns, is that when you log into your PTIN database, you can see all of your continuing education credits. And you can also, if you're doing more than 50 tax returns, you can see all of your clients' tax returns. And that way you can see if anybody else has used your ID number to prepare tax returns for clients you didn't know about. We've had some problems with that, but it hasn't really been identity theft. It's been somebody transposing their PTIN and it would end up in the wrong account. Brett wants to know, how far does the IRS go back regarding compliance? Generally, you need to go back. IRS will go back 3 to 5 years, not more than that. Desmona wants to know if you have to be caught up on state taxes too. The IRS doesn't have any way to check on that. Mike wants to know, what if you filed all your taxes, but you're making payments on your back tax bill? Is that considered in compliance? Yes. So if you have a balance due and you're on an installment agreement and you are actually making the payments, the IRS does consider you to be in compliance. So Mike, you're in perfectly good shape. Then let me tell you just a little bit about some history. There is something called the RTRP, the Registered Tax Return Preparer, that the IRS set up several years ago as a mandated process for people who wanted to file taxes, because about 47 states in the union do not have any minimum requirements for education, training, experience, licensing, or anything for tax preparers. Well, the IRS got sued, they lost, so they stopped the RTRP program and they set up the voluntary AFSP program that Mike is talking about. Why am I telling you about this RTRP thing that's just history? Well, because even though they replaced that RTRP, those people who took that test in good faith still have some privileges, okay? And the Circular 230, which is the basic operations Bible for tax professionals, still talks about RTRPs because it hasn't been updated since 2014 or 2016. And when you get your AFSP, you get a certificate like the one I have. So the replacement now is a voluntary program. It's called the Annual Filing Season Program, and you get a record of completion, just like the one that looks like that you can frame and put on your wall. So it looks like you have something official from the IRS. It's not really a license or anything, but it does come with certain privileges. So we're going to get back to the RTRPs in a second and tell you why they are in fact important. I'm not going to get into the details about the background check. Crystal wants to know, if you have your own firm and work for another firm, you only need one PTIN. The PTIN is for the tax returns you sign. So there's only one. Mark said, I let my PTIN lapse 2 years ago. Do I obtain a new one? You'll have to log into the system and see if it lets you reactivate. Excuse me. You can probably reactivate it. And don't worry, there's no penalty. You don't have to have it every year if you're not preparing tax returns for money. So the annual filing season program record of completion, there are 2 ways to do that. There is, just like everything else, the hard way. The hard way is if you have no special background or skills and you haven't gotten any special education or anything, then you have to take 18 hours of continuing education in taxation. 6 hours of it have to be a mandatory annual federal tax refresher course, and you have to take this course every year. And along with that course, you have to pass a 100-question exam, and you have to do that every single year, which once you're an EA, you don't have to take another test. In addition to those 6 hours, you have to take another 12 hours of continuing education every year. 2 hours of that is ethics courses, and the other 10 hours are federal tax courses. So this is the hard way, but there is an easier way to get the AFSP. And this is where those RTRP folks come into play. Those people who made the good faith investment to sit for that exam get a reduced qualification for the AFSP. They don't have to take that 6-hour exam, 6-hour class with the 100-question exam. People who have passed at least part 1 of the EA exam, or if they're licensed in California, Oregon, or Maryland, they don't have to take that 6-hour course and that 100-question exam. And people who are VITA or tax counseling for the elderly volunteers don't have to do that either. And one of the reasons that I guess we have some of the privileges with VITA and TCE is a few years ago, one of our graduates and an instructor for us who runs a VITA site asked, is there a way to get continuing education credit for the work we're doing at VITA? And when I asked the IRS, they looked at that and said, what a good idea. Let's reward them and let them have credit, education credit. And so now they also get this. So They don't have to take the 6-hour federal update. They don't have to take the 100-question exam. They do have to take 15 hours of continuing education. And that 15 hours of continuing education consists of the 2 hours of ethics that everybody has to take, no matter what your designation is. It's 2 hours of ethics, 3 hours of federal tax updates without an exam. And for my students, I include that 3-hour federal tax update class every year, and 10 hours of other tax classes. So there are a lot of education you need to take, but believe it or not, it isn't that much. With so many things going on in the tax world out there, it's really important to be able to get the education and keep up with the things you need to know just to do tax returns. Katya, what position must you get with the IRS for 5 years to become an enrolled agent? Generally, you need to be in active compliance, like IRS collections, revenue officer, or revenue agent in audit. So Lee says the AFSP would be in addition to the EA or in place of an EA. The AFSP doesn't give you a lot of privileges. The one privilege it gives you is if you sign a tax return, the IRS will work with you to allow you to explain and perhaps handle the audit on only that tax return for the year that you were an AFSP if you did that. So it's preliminary to the EA. A lot of people can bypass it. I get that certificate. You can get that. It's nothing extra. I get that certificate just so that I can show you. Linda, if I don't have 18 hours of education credit, can I get passed for my EA test? No. This is the kind of question. Do me a favor, post it in the Tax Mama forum and I can give you more detail about that. That's going to take too long to explain. And Ishan has some notes for Katya. After I pass the exam, should I apply to tax preparation firms or accounting firms? That depends on what you want to do. So we're going to talk about that. We have that class about how to make a living, and we'll talk about that in more detail. And anytime you have questions, please, you're going to have a special forum for just our students where you can post specific questions and I will answer them. So Maumba says, I started this volunteer for VITA this year. So basically I only need to do 15 hours CE. If you did pass their testing and everything else, yes, absolutely. Okay, getting ready for the exam. First thing you need to do is get your PTIN number. Then you need to set up your Prometric account, and you definitely want to sign up online. You can sign up on paper, but it'll take forever for them to get it and process it. If you sign up online, it'll be processed and set up immediately. Your goal today is to set up your Prometric account and your PTIN account today. It costs nothing to set up Prometric, and it's $30.75 to set up the PTIN account. Once you sign into your Prometric account, just set it up. Don't schedule any exams until you know when you're going to be ready, because there is a fee, potentially a very large fee, for rescheduling the exam if you can't take it when you have it scheduled. So we'll talk about how to schedule that in class. The form that you use to apply, this is the paper version of the form, is a form 2587. And just to apply, it's a very simple form. They don't ask very much. They ask for your name, address, and basically PTIN number. That's it. And this is a free form. It's built into the Prometric database when you register. How do you go about scheduling your exam? Well, you go online when you're ready to schedule to prometric.com/IRS. You can call them on their 800 number or the international line, but expect a very long wait. They even have longer waits than the IRS. I've complained to the IRS about their level of customer service. When you do schedule something, you're going to get an email confirmation. Make sure you review it for accuracy. Make sure they have you have spelled your name correctly because it's going to follow you. And if there are any errors, contact Prometric right away and let them know. Now, how do you pay for the exam? When you schedule the exam, you're going to pay a fee. The fee is now only acceptable via MasterCard, Visa, American Express, or electronic checks. They don't accept paper or cash or anything else anymore, and certainly not any cyber currency. The cost of the exam this year is $206 per exam. So you're going to have 3 exams. Last year, it was $185, so they have gone up. There's no point in prepaying for all of them. There isn't any discount, volume discount for paying for all 3 of them. Once you pay that fee, it isn't refundable. So don't pay the fee and don't schedule unless you're sure that you want to be doing this. Before I get into that, let me see what the other questions are. How long will TaxMama work with me to enable me to pass the exam? Ivy, forever, forever. I still have people coming back from 10 and 15 years ago. Salote, I'm very new and have no experience at all. Will my training cover newbies? Yes, we'll show you how the 1040 works and work all the way up. And that applies to Naomi as well. When does the live class end and the next one start? Well, the live class is going to start in May and end in October, and that will cover all 3 parts. It will start again next May. Since we're spending most of the year teaching, we only have it running once. Karen, I can commit to full-time study. Is there a way to expedite the course from 6 months to say 6 to 8 weeks? Well, since each course is updated and every time we teach it, you have access to last year's material. And so you can work from last year's material, and I will give you the tools. For instance, last December's federal tax update class, which shows the changes, and you can use that to help study, and you can get through it in 6 to 8 weeks. So yes, you are able to do that. Absolutely. The goal is to do 2 things. Help you pass the exam and help you be the most amazing tax professional you can ever imagine. So let's talk about the fees. We know it's $206 per exam. If you have to take the exam again, you can take it 4 times during the same year, and you have to pay again. So try to pass the first time. So if you pass them all the first time, you're going to invest $618 total this summer. If you need to reschedule within 5 to 29 days before the exam, there's a $35 fee. If you need to reschedule 30 days or more, there's no fee. But after those 5 days and the 5 days before the exam, there is no refund at all. So you're not getting anything back. So people who have been thinking, well, maybe I'm not ready and it's a few days before the exam, you may as well go and take the exam. You're not getting your money back. You have nothing to lose. And some of those people who have done that have surprised themselves, and they've actually managed to pass the exam. Walk out in total shock when they got the report that they passed. So if you don't show up for the exam, you're not going to get a refund either. So you may as well do that. Can I still pursue and get PTIN, EFIN, and EA status if I filed a tax extension and I haven't filed 2022 return yet? My intention was myself, hub, and side business as my first client. Absolutely. Absolutely. You can do all of that. You are in compliance because you have an extension. So you are just fine. So let's talk about registering. When I'm working with my students, and I told you people sometimes have problems not being in compliance. For instance, I had one very wonderful lady who hadn't filed for several years because she's been waiting for her husband, who has a business, to get his act together. And so She wanted to be an enrolled agent. She passed everything, but she hadn't filed tax returns. Well, we got her back in compliance, and to heck with her husband, and we convinced the IRS that she would become a really good asset to the IRS. So unless you have criminal issues, okay, unless you have criminal issues, I can probably intercede for you and or tell you how to approach the IRS to get approved as an enrolled agent. If you have serious issues like criminal issues or something like that, I would recommend you call the IRS office first before starting the process. Make sure that you know who you talk to and get them to verify that if you do whatever they tell you to do to fix the problem, that they will allow you to get your EA. Let's see. Does bankruptcy stop the process of becoming an enrolled agent? Robert, you're getting ahead of me. In fact, it does not. Marwan, I'm 52 years old. Is it too late to start this career? We've had students in their 80s who've continued to build practice. So no, you're just a child. Is it appropriate? Is an appraiser another role you can get at the IRS that will allow you to become an EA? I don't think so. But you can check with the IRS. Now, it's generally a compliance issue because appraising isn't something that is involved with tax law per se. So compliance, collections, and audit pretty much always will guarantee that you can get your EA. And the IRS is hiring, and then you don't have to take the exam. I can't make the class schedule. Yes, absolutely everything is recorded. So anytime you can't make a class, just log in, and within an hour or two after the class, everything is there for you to watch, listen to, or read. So we accommodate hearing, seeing, and listening and reading. I'm in insurance business. How can I start learning about taxes step by step to become an EA later on? Well, you do that back. You do that, right here in this class. How far back do they check criminal history? I'm not sure, Mike. It depends on the issue. So if there's federal crimes, it may pop up. And if they do a Google check on your name and something pops up, even if it's more than 3 or 4 years back, it might attract their attention. That's why when you have situations like that, I tell you to call the IRS first, talk it over with them, and find out directly. Saves a lot of money and a lot of time. I have a PTIN already. Do I just apply for the IRS for a job? Yes. You don't need a PTIN to apply for the IRS for a job. All right. Speaking of which, let's do a polling question. And I want to see how many of you already have your PTIN. So we have so far 81%, 80% say you have a PTIN. 2 people so far are saying you're filing for it today. 22% are saying that you don't have your PTIN, but you're going to have to do that today, right? Blanca, I'm a Mexican, just moved to the US since I'm married a US citizen. I'm an accountant and work for US companies in the finance department. What are my requirements to get a PTIN? You got a social security number, my love? Log in and just get your PTIN. You should be just fine. Do you get $200 off the individual parts of the course? No, Shamela, that is for the entire course. Yeah, so you wouldn't have any problem. Just make sure that your name on the PTIN application exactly matches the name on your social security number. Got my PTIN over a decade ago, never used it. You're going to need to reapply. Does a civil judgment from a credit card company affect eligibility? It will not. Okay, so we're going to close the poll, and you can see that 78% of you already have your PTIN. 3 of you, I persuaded one more than before, are filing for it today. 41 of you don't have it, and you're not saying you're filing for it today. Come on, what can I do to light a fire under you? Okay. Another issue is if you have disabilities, if you have special disabilities, Prometric will make accommodations. But what you want to do is contact them before scheduling your appointment. They have a special phone number. It's 800-967-1139. You can call them anywhere between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. Eastern Time, Monday through Friday. There's a link over here to a list of the various accommodations for various disabilities. They have very limited areas where they can accommodate this, so let them know in advance. People with disabilities need to schedule the exam in advance, in which case you know that you have a deadline for your studying and you're going to have to get your studying done. Karen, that's the kind of question we're not going to have time for today. So just go ahead and post that in the Tax Mama forum, and I'll be happy to answer that. Take me too long to answer here. We have some news. This is absolutely new with this year's Prometric exam. In the past, when you went in there to sit for the exam, they used one of those wands to make sure you have no guns or other metal. I have no idea. Pencils, I don't know. They check that you had nothing on you. They give you a locker. You put in, your wallet, your purse, your glasses, and well, maybe not your glasses, definitely your hearing aids. Pretty much everything goes into that locker. You take nothing in with you except the pencil and paper that they give you. And so this year, they are going to allow people to take water into the room as long as it's a transparent bottle with no labels. They're going to check it carefully to see that you have no hidden notes somewhere on that bottle, but you are going to be able to take water in with you. Must the EA exam be taken in order? No, you don't have to take it in order. You can take them in any order you like. So let's talk about how the exam works. First of all, it runs for 10 months a year. It runs from May 1st, that's when they open it for the exam this year, to February 29th. Next year is going to be a leap year. You're allowed to take each part 4 times during the year. Usually, at least my students, usually they pass the first time, so they don't have to use those 4 times. And if you don't pass, you can typically take it again in a day or 2, but you want to do a little bit of a review. Where can you sit for the exam? Well, most major areas in the United States. There are some areas outside the United States, and I will show you. And in order to get to the location, you actually have to log into your Prometric account to see where the nearest location is. And sometimes the nearest location is 200 miles away or a few hours away. I know last year we fought and fought with the IRS because they had nobody in Hawaii. They got nobody in Hawaii until we beat them over the head, month after month, and they finally got somebody to open up the Hawaii office to enrolled agents in October. Okay, I mean, really, the people in Hawaii had a very, very long wait last year. But that's what I do is, I bug the IRS about stuff. Most of them are open Saturdays. Some of them are open Sundays. Many of them are open on the evenings. And the exam lasts for 3.5 hours. Okay, so you're going to be there, figure that you're going to be there about 4 hours for this process. Again, here are the phone numbers for Prometric. There's this phone number over here that I have next to that. I say, shh. I don't know if the phone number works directly, but this used to be a problem phone number that they do not publish anywhere. And so you may want to take this number down, or at least you're going to have the handout so you'll be able to see it. But this this particular phone number is one that used to work when people had problems, and it bypassed the very, very long wait. So it's 800-853-6769. These are the international locations right now. So, and it gives you the dates when they're open. So we know we've got several areas in India. We have one in London, Korea, Japan, and Canada. We used to have France and London. We do have one in London in August, but most of the other locations are closed. One of the reasons is, and it took me years to find out, is they have to have people that have background checks by the IRS in order to proctor the exams. All of the exams are in person. And it's very time consuming to get those people, to get the background checks on those people. Can you take the exam from home? You cannot take the exam from home. You have to go to the Prometric section. I am not sure, Isabel, what your answer is to registered agent. I don't know how that relates to the exam. I'm sorry. Can I buy the basic course only, and how? We no longer sell the basic course. The 3.5-hour time limit for each exam, or all 3 exams, for each exam. Ishan, can you please post the link to the handout again? Does the IRS hire EAs? Yes, they do. Mahalo, Laura. Good to see you. Hang on. In the background, they check if you have vaccinations. No, they don't. Let me see if I can. Thank you very much, Ishan. Do I have a self-study class also? I do not. It was very complicated to manage the self-study and the premium class, too much overlap. So now everybody who signs up for the premium class, if they want self-study credits, we'll put them in there. But otherwise, everything is available for you to be able to study on your own regardless. What percentage of the students pass the EA exam on the first try? The ones who actually do the work, who do what I tell them to do and come to all the classes, probably 95% pass on the first try. Very often the ones that don't pass are people for whom English is not their first language and they're struggling with the language on the exams. But believe me, many of those people astonish themselves by passing. We're going to talk about the weekly study commitment in a little while. If a person has their PTIN through block, how does that affect this? Your PTIN is supposed to be tied to you. Lee, you can't be a proctor for the international exams for the IRS, but they have other exams that don't require the same background check. So you'll have to try to contact them. We're getting there. The link for the discount is only if you stay here for the whole time. That's the bribe. If you were charged with a crime and found not guilty, no, that does not affect the background check. Do we provide practice exams? Yes, we provide Gleim and Lamber's databases. Can I have a virtual shared space kind of office? Absolutely. Does having your EFIN have any bearing on this process? Well, Renee, if you've got your EFIN, you also have your PTIN, so you have a starting point. De Silvia, drop me an email and I will send you the link. Not a problem. Okay, one of the other things you need to be very aware of is, particularly because of this problem with those people who proctor the IRS exams for Prometric having to have the background check, they end up having a lot of closures. So if they don't have enough staff, they're going to post the closures, and they can post it. You can search by country. For instance, they know in advance that in Massachusetts, San Bruno, California, Detroit, Michigan, Miami, Florida, they are not going to be able to offer the IRS exam in these dates from May through August or November. Look up your city here. The other problem is that sometimes they suddenly close it because the one person they had available is out sick. So always search for the closures before you schedule your exam or before you show up, just in case. Isabel, if you've already got Gleim, drop me a note and we will talk to you. How do you join TaxMama? Just join TaxMama, go to taxmama.com, but that isn't going to get you into the class, but that will get you into the free TaxMama membership. Is a fingerprint part of the background check and electronic filing? You will need to send them a fingerprint when you send in the application. I think you need to do that for the PTIN. I don't remember. Okay, very important about your ID. It definitely has to be current. So your name has to match, your PTIN name has to match your ID. So if it has to match your social security number first. So if your name on your driver's license or passport card doesn't match the name in your social security account, you may want to change that because your ID has to match the name on your PTIN account and the name in Prometric. And you have to look like the person pictured on your ID. Please don't think I'm kidding. We have had people turned away. For instance, somebody had a sex change operation. Somebody else lost a lot of weight. And so they did not match their appearance and they turned away and did not get a refund. So it's very, very, it's very important. What happens with the registration fee when the site is closed? They apply it to another date. Yeah, that's been one of the big issues that we have run into. Do we teach students how to prepare small business taxes, S Corp? We have sample tax returns that we walk you through. Yes. Liz, we'll talk about that. Drop me a note on the board, okay? Because I've already explained that in emails about 6 times. So we're not going to do that here. All right. By the way, I hate repeating myself. One of the reasons I am not traveling around the country to NAEA, CSEA, and everything else, teaching the same class over and over again, I get bored with repeating myself. So I'll try to tell you things 3 times. After that, I'm not repeating myself. Everything is recorded. Look at the recording or the handout. So for this year, what is the exam going to be covering? Okay. It covers the information that was passed in tax law up through December 31st of 2022. Any laws that were changed, any court decisions that took place after that are not going to be on the exam. So once December 31st is passed, this year, thank goodness we didn't have any of the weird stuff that happened last year, where we had several laws that were passed that were retroactive to 2020, 2018, and 19. So we're going to have questions out of the Further Consolidated Appropriations Act, various of the CARE Acts, although many of those provisions have expired, the Consolidated Appropriations Act in 2020, which only had 593 pages, the American Rescue Act from 2021, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act of 2021, which is where the IRS got their $80 billion. That's only 1,039 pages. And pretty much the last law that was passed in 2022 was the Inflation Reduction Act. Well, we also got the Secure 2.0 Act relating to retirement plans. All of these things are going to be on the exam. Lee wants to know how I can get access to previous classes. The previous last year's classes are all there for you to watch, listen, or read. Everything is there until we switch until we switch and replace them with the new information. So everything is always usable. So let's talk about the test and how they create the test. The exam questions are based on, the scoring is based on quantitative analysis. When the IRS was given the exam, they used to have 1 point for true-false questions, 2 points for multiple choice, and 3 points for math problems. They don't do that anymore. The IRS isn't administering it. They're using a complicated algorithm at Prometric based on a much larger, more complex database. We no longer have true-false questions. Everything is multiple choice. Many of the multiple choice questions are problems. And they look at, the software looks at prior testing results during the year as people are answering questions. If they see that certain questions are wrong or answered incorrectly by everyone, they may throw out the question. So they look at the past. They also refine the questions and the scoring with this year's exam. So there is no absolute number on how much each question is worth. Everybody is going to get an exam that includes 100 questions, and they're all going to get different exams. Nobody gets the same exams. The computer throws up an exam with 100 questions randomly selected, but designed so that all exams taken are of equal difficulty. That's what their intention is. But for somebody, for instance, who hasn't studied IRAs and their entire exam questions are about IRAs and retirement plans, they don't think it's as easy, as hard as somebody else's. But the next time you take an exam, it will be different. The passing score is 105, and if you fail, they have these messages that are coded with a 1, 2, or 3, and this is what that looks like. So if you fail, you're going to get a message, because and I'll show you each of the different topics within the exam. Each of those topics is going to get a 1, which is weak, or a 2, marginal, you may need additional study, or 3, strong, hey, you really get this. Now, when we realize that that Prometric is able to do this if you fail the exams, we ask them, why can't you do this if we pass the exams? So if we pass the exams and we got you're not going to get a score of over 105. You'll just know you passed, period. Why not tell us how well we did in case we do need more training on some of those areas? And they scratched their heads a little bit and they said, yeah, we can do that. So now, even when you pass the exam, you're going to get these numbers for each of the parts that you pass. Moe wants to know if I can sign up for individual tax preparation, and next year I will sign up for the business. Yes, you can sign up for individual parts, but the discount will only apply to the full class. Is the exam open book? No, it is not. You have to know this, and yes, the exams are timed. Guy, I'm not going to be able to answer that specific question right now. Drop the note in the TaxMama database, and I will try to answer you. There are too many specific questions about your particular identity, and we're not ever going to finish if we answer all of those. We can't. I've given you the overall information and what you're going to run into. Now you're going to have to use your judgment to make sure that it works. Okay, so you're going to have to look at your information and your IDs to make sure that it meets what I told you. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to get into the exam. So what happens once you take one of the exams? Because you don't have to take them all at one time like we did. Okay, when we took it, we had to take 4 exams in 2 days. We only got one shot, took them in September, got the results in March, and if we didn't pass anything, we only got one shot the following September or October to fix it. Once you pass the first exam, you normally have 2 years to finish passing the other 2 parts. Because of COVID, we now have 3 years instead of 2. So People who've taken the exam in 2020, 21, and 22, and now in 23 have 3 years. I don't know if they're going to do that again. So basically what that's going to look like is if you passed part 3 on May 16th of 2021, you have until May 16th of 2024 to finish part 1 and 2. Okay, it's very important to put a note on your calendar at least 3 or 4 months in advance before your deadline. Otherwise, you're going to lose part 3. So that doesn't mean you have to start over with part 1. If you already taken that but haven't taken part 2, you will lose the first part and then have to take that part again. So it's really important to keep track of when your deadline is if you are not taking the exams within each year. No, Lee, you don't have to take the exams in order. All right. The scores generally over the last few years were improving dramatically. They were doing very well. People were doing better since 2008. And then in 2021 and 22, during COVID, when more people had time to study because they weren't going anywhere, the passage rates dropped. So the last season, part 1, the average passage rate for part 1 was 55 to 60% in the summer. And from November to February, the rates dropped to 50%. For part 2, which is the really hard one, the passage rate went between 60 and 65%, dropped to 60% in November through February. Now, one of the interesting things about that is usually the part 2 passage rates are lower than part 1. So that somehow managed to switch. And part 3, which was always the easiest exam, the passage rate was normally 80%. It dropped to 60 to 65% and down to 60% in November through February. So basically right now, the way it looks, the average passage rate for each exam is in the 60% range. Not for my students, but that's what it's looking like. Let's do the next polling question because I want your interaction. Do you have your Prometric account yet? Yes, you need to leave for home now. Home for work. Yes, you can listen on your phone. Have I discussed what's covered in the parts for name? Remember I asked you to download the handout and look ahead so you can see what I'm going to discuss. I have not discussed that yet. That's coming up. Chris wants to know if students taking the exam will be provided with a calculator. We're going to talk about that. So Mark says this 3-year deadline will hold for the 2023 exam schedule. Yes, absolutely. So have you opened your Prometric account right now? I'm going to give you another 10 seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we have 34% who already have it. Good for you. 19% are going to set it up this afternoon. And I applaud you. I'm cheering for you. 47% do not have it. It's free to set up, so please set up the account. It costs nothing, there is no risk, and it stays there long term. Don't worry, you don't need to worry about losing the poll. It's all right. Not sure what Prometric is. I think maybe, Deborah, you came in late. Prometric is the company that runs the exam. We were going through that in detail before, including with their phone numbers. So now let's talk about the exam parts. There are 3 parts to the exam. Part 1 is individual, so it's all about individual taxation, plus things you wouldn't expect. Part 2 is about businesses and a lot more than you could even imagine. That's really tough. And Part 3 is about representation, representing clients, practice, and procedure. This is where we have the ethics issues and all of the prepare penalties and everything. So let's look at each exam one by one. So the first exam, part 1, is about individuals. There are 100 questions on that exam, and you have that 3.5-hour period, and we're going to walk through that in a moment. So please don't ask. 85 of those 100 questions are scored. 15 of those questions are not scored, and you won't know which ones they are. Okay, so there are a number of domains. In other words, we call them topics. The first one is preliminary work to prepare tax returns, getting the information from clients, organizers, and so forth. Domain number 2 is income and assets. Domain number 3 is deductions and credits. Number 4 is all about taxation. Number 5 is advising the individual taxpayer. Now, remember, each one of these domains or topics, when you sit for the exam and you get your results, you're going to get that 1, 2, or 3 score that we talked about. And the 6th domain is specialized returns for individuals. This is the one that knocks people out because they don't think it's important, but those 11 questions can make the difference between passing and failing in the exam. So what are we focusing on in the individual class? These are all the different topics we're focusing on, and I want you, I'm not going to read this to you, I want you to download it. But the special topics for the specialized returns are estate tax, gift tax, and international tax issues. These are very important for you to focus on. And the special emphasis for this year's exam is distributions from retirement accounts, the whole series of those 1099s, including the 1099K, and there will be questions on the premium tax credit. Part 2, once again, there are 85 questions that are scored out of the 100 questions. Your domains in part 2, you don't have 6 domains, but you do have 3. The first one is business entities and considerations. That is 30 questions. That's a big chunk. And this is going to apply to all of the different entities. Schedule C, partnerships, corporations, S corporations, 1041s, trusts, a whole bunch of stuff. Then we've got the business tax preparation and the specialized returns for taxpayers. So this is what that's going to look like. We've got all of these are just some of the topics. The entities that we're talking about are all the Schedule C, partnerships, C and S corporations, but the special entities for domain 3 are estate and trust. These are the 1041. The other estate is in part 1. That's the 706 and 709. They are asking about rental property, exempt organizations, retirement plans, and farmers. There is a huge body of information you need to know for the Part 2 business exam. When we took it back in the days, in the previous century, it was 2 separate exams. Now you are stuck with having to know 2 exams worth of information in one. They're going to have special emphasis on the K1s that come through from the trusts and the partnerships. The new K2 and K3 for partnerships and corporations, which personally I don't think belong on an exam for enrolled agents. Basically, that is for a much higher level of tax preparation with complex international issues, but they are big on the international issues. Reporting basis for S corporations, the new rules for the retirement plans in the Secure 2.0 Act, and a number of special credits which they don't define, but there is going to be a special meeting for CPE providers coming up, and I've asked them hopefully if they're going to include the employee retention credit. I really don't want to see that on the exam. Philip, I've been preparing tax returns for 18 years. Do you suggest that I take these classes? It depends on how much you know about these different areas. So if you feel that you know enough, you don't want my class. You want to go to Gleim or Lambers directly. You won't need my class, but I'm going to tell you this. When I took the exam myself, I was the queen of partnership returns. I did hundreds of very complicated partnership returns, and I've been doing them for years. And that's the only part of the exam I failed, because what I knew and the way the exam questions are worded didn't match. The way the exam questions are worded are just not exactly the way you work with them in real life. So it's going to be up to you. If you know enough and you work through with Prometric, with Gleim or Fast Word Academy, you will learn how the exam questions are worded and you won't need my class. Absolutely. So let's look at the third part, which is the ethics, practice, procedures. 100 questions, again, only 85 of them are going to be scored. And so here we've got a number of domains. We've got 4 of them. Domain 1 is practice and procedures, but look at that, that's 26 questions. Domain 2 is representation before the IRS. So we're dealing with the rules of representation in general and what we need to know ethically. Number 3 is the special areas of representation, the specific areas of audit, collections. They even ask about tax court issues. And number 4 is the filing process. And this is what people don't expect. This is where they have all of the information relating to due diligence for the earned income credit and other refundable credits. People aren't expecting that in this exam. They don't study for it. And this is where they miss by 2 or 3 points from that 105. There are fewer materials, fewer topics in this exam, but the special emphasis this year is going to be the new identity protection PIN changes, e-filing, the electronic filing ID numbers, and what happens when they get revoked, what to do if tax returns are rejected, the interpretation of IRS notices and dealing with correspondence audits, and more identity theft issues. So those are the areas to focus on and emphasize in your studies, whether you use my class or not. The material I'm telling you will work with anything that you're using to study. We're going to do another quickie poll. And this is, have you ever taken any part of the EA exam? Some people have passed at least one part. No, but somebody already has exams scheduled. Most of you have not taken the exam at all. Katya, after working for 5 years at the IRS, how does one become an EA? Do you just register, or does the IRS grant the credential? Before leaving the IRS, because you have to leave the IRS, you file paperwork with the IRS, and it takes them about 2 or 3 months to approve you. And if you left the IRS and didn't apply, you can still go back within a couple of years. So we're going to close the poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And what do we have? We have 85% of you that haven't sat for the exam. Well, then you definitely want my help. Some of you have passed at least one part, 13%. Hopefully, if it's part 1, you can get your AFSP easily, and my class will give you all of the continuing education credits you need for being able to get your AFSP. A few of you have tried and didn't pass at least one part, and 4 of you have not yet, but you've got the exam date scheduled, and I applaud you. Sylvia, this is my first year doing taxes. Do you think I have a chance to pass? Absolutely. If you do the work, you will pass. Not a bit of doubt. So what's the exam like? Okay, it's a computerized exam. And I said it's multiple choice only. There are no true false questions. You're going to go in person to a Prometric testing facility. They have remote proctoring, but not for the IRS exam. You're going to be in a room full of computers. There'll be a lot of people taking exams, and you'll have a desk with one of those dividers between yourself and the next booth. Not even a booth, just one of those dividers away from the person with the next table. You're going to be really, really quiet. They'll let you bring water and snacks, but you can't bring the snacks into the room. It's all going to go into the locker. As I said, this year, they'll let you bring in the water. Okay. If you have disabilities, remember I talked about the ADA arrangement, Americans with Disability Act. So go back to that page where there's a link that will show you what you need to do to get them to help things get set up for your particular disability. Remember, they don't have a lot of extra space. Someone was asking about calculators. When Prometric started doing the exam, I took the exam the very, very first morning, the very first day, and I took part 2, and the calculator they had on the screen was terrible. So I politely demanded that they give us physical calculators. So they did that. So you have physical calculators, but normally I say, don't use a calculator on the screen. But now they're using the calculator that's in your Windows software. They're using the same calculator. So if that's working well for you, then you may want to go ahead and use that. But if you're working with my class and you're using the Gleim test mode, practice in there and see if that works for you, and then take the calculator, the manual calculator, but don't necessarily use that calculator if you don't need it. Use it for backup. They're going to give you paper. They're going to give you pencil and paper, and probably 2 or 3 pages. If you ask for more paper, they're going to take away the paper they gave you and shred it. So don't ask for more paper. Use both sides of the paper and make your notes. Try not to use up the whole thing, because if you have good notes and they're legible and you can go back to them, those notes may help you answer other questions. So I don't like relinquishing that. At the end of the exam, they will take the paper and they will shred it. So in the meantime, don't do any ripping apart or anything else. Asuncion is a bookkeeper with clients. Do I have a chance to pass the exam with no full time to study? No, you don't. But at least if you have about 2 hours a day to focus on that, including some weekend time, you should be able to pass. And Taylor has to give the I report because she's blind. So she's already checked, and they do use a particular system on the computer that will read her the questions. Does the test start when they say it starts, or is it like insurance or financial tests when you click on the screen to start? Jason, they're going to set you up. They're going to set up the screen, and I'm going to walk you through how that works in just a moment. Emily, I'm not going to spend more time on the AFSP again. Go back to the earlier slides at the beginning, because we've already covered that. Okay, and people are going to want to go home today. Are we allowed restroom breaks? Yes, you are. We're going to talk about how much time you need. So what they did, they changed it a year ago, is the exam. I told you there are 100 questions. They broke the exam up into 2 parts. So you're going to have 50 questions for the first part, and you can go back, you can review them, you can change them, and everything else for the first 50 questions. Then, once you're done with that, and you click that you're done with that, you're going to get a 15-minute break in the system. So it's not timed. You get 15 minutes, you can go out, you can drink, you can go to the restroom and so forth. But when you come back and start the next 50 questions, you cannot go back to the first ones. So you're starting another completely different 50 questions. Can you go take restroom breaks in the meantime when it's not that 15-minute break? Yes, but the timer will continue. And so if you're gone for 5 minutes, you're going to lose 5 minutes on the test. And that's okay. Most of the time, people will still have an hour or a half hour left when they're done. So how do you prepare for the exam? Well, you can watch their sample software. They call it the C tutorial. This is a link to the Prometric site, and you can practice the functionality of it. Or you can go visit the site for a test drive, which is now free. They used to charge $30, but there's no need to do that because the C tutorial is exactly what you'll see on the screen. So that's a waste of time. And option number 3 is use Gleim, which we provide for our students. In Gleim's test mode, they have a study mode and they have a test mode. So when you're in the test mode, it acts like the exam. You can set up a specific number of questions, and you're going to have to go straight through just like you would for the exam, but the screen looks exactly like the test at Prometric. So if you work with that and practice with that, you will be very comfortable when you get to Prometric to take the exam. And the other thing you want to do is you want to attend my final review sessions. So you absolutely want to attend my final review sessions because we're going to walk you through how to answer the questions, especially questions you may never have seen before, because that's going to happen in the real world when you're sitting for the exam. No matter how much we prepare you, there's always going to be something they're going to throw at you that you didn't expect, and it helps if you trained to know how to answer those surprise questions. So some ideas for the real exam day. Do request the physical calculator, but if the calculator on the screen works, fine, just keep it handy. Don't ask for more paper because you're going to lose all of your notes. Don't rip the paper or take it apart. And for in-depth tips, that's what we're going to spend time in my EA class, going to a lot of trouble and energy to teach you how to pass the exam. Now, remember I told you the exam has 2 parts. They broke it up to 50 questions. And once you finish that first part, you can't go back. So this is the sequence: 50 questions, 15-minute break, 50 questions. Any other breaks are on your own time. During the exam itself, you have the ability, and I'm going to show you how, you have the ability to mark the questions that you want to review. You can highlight some of the text in the questions. You can cross out the wrong answers. You can look at a table to see which questions you haven't completed, and you can always see what your remaining time is. And I'm going to show you what the screen looks like and what each step of the system looks like. Okay? The first thing that's going to happen when you start the exam is they're going to set up the screen, and you're going to have this 15-minute get familiar with the software tool. And then once that 15-minute ends, you have to have clicked on start the exam. Okay, if you don't click on start the exam, you've lost it, and you're going to have to pay to take the exam again. So you have to be very, very careful about that. Before you actually start the exam, you're going to see this non-disclosure agreement pop up, and it tells you on penalty of death and or losing any part that you have passed or losing the right to take any parts again, do not disclose the information that is on the exam. I see a lot of people posting questions on Facebook, which IRS has access to. do not post the topics and questions in Facebook. You could get hit with this non-disclosure issue and lose the exams you've passed. They're serious about this if they find that people have done this. The one instance in which you're able to disclose things, for instance, to me or whoever you're working with for the exam, is if you find problems in the questions. If you really find that the questions are inconsistent and they're outdated, there are problems where the 2 or 3 answers count, then you're going to want to let me know exactly what the question is all about, and I can contact IRS and Prometric and get them to review the question and see if in fact there is a problem with that. Otherwise, do not disclose questions or topics. We'll talk about the different tools that come with the class once we're done with the information about the EA exam. Okay, so navigating through the exam. Once you start the exam, basically, this is the introductory part before the exam starts, where they walk you through how the exam works. And you can see you've got all of these different questions over here along the left side. And if you look in the middle, you see number 27 is dark and it's a little dog-eared. So that means that that particular question has been marked for you to come back to and look at. The question with the arrow, number 26, is the question for the page you're on right now. And I'll walk you through what the different things mean. When you answer a multiple choice question, this is what it's going to look like. There's going to be a question and there are going to be 4 answers. You'll find the calculator on the screen. It will be right there on the screen, and we've already talked about whether or not you want to use it again. In the exam, when you have a question, you're able to highlight parts of the question. And this is important because there are a lot of extra words in the question that are just there to throw you off. And if you highlight the important information and ignore the rest, you're able to focus on actually answering the question. And the reason that you're able to get the highlighting feature is because we asked the IRS to do this back at the end of 2014, and they said, yeah, that's a great idea. And they put it in from 2015 forward. So you can thank us for that. And for the next thing, this is what it looks like. The other thing is crossing out answers. So when you're looking at a question, sometimes you know for sure some of the answers are wrong and you want to cross them out. That's what you're doing when you're studying. We got the IRS to also add that feature. So when you leave that question and you move to the next one, the system saves this. So if you still don't know the answer, you can mark the question and come back to it, and your highlights and your crossouts are still going to be there. So these are 2 very important features that we convinced IRS and Prometric to do for you. So this is what a page with the question looks like. So you've got a question. Sometimes you'll have a grid like that with information. The calculator is above the answer choices, and then you have the answer choices. Now, down in the very bottom, you see there is that little wheel and then that grid with 9 little boxes like tic-tac-toe in the question. If you click on those 9 little boxes, it will pop up and show you what we have on the left over here that I've circled, where it says section review. You're going to see the entire 100 questions over there, and you'll see which ones have been answered, which ones have been flagged, and which ones have not been answered. So periodically check on that. That won't take you out of the exam. Whatever you do, do not click on the finish test that I've circled on the top right. And in the middle on the top, it shows you how much time you have remaining for that section. As you're going through this and you want to review the questions, clicking on that grid, on that 9 question tic-tac-toe grid, is going to give you the table with everything. And this is where, as I said, you can click on unattempted. Do not leave any questions unanswered. You don't get negative points for answering a question wrong, but you don't get points at all for not answering it. So at least give it a try. It will show the ones you've attempted and the ones you flagged. And I'm going to give you some warning here right now. When you go through the exam and you flag some questions, and then you go back and review, be careful about changing your original answer. If you've been studying, trust yourself. Trust yourself. Your first answer came from your first instinct. It's probably right. What I have heard from people who didn't pass the exam, and they were 1 or 2 points off, is consistently every single one of those people admitted they went back and changed an answer or two. Those are the ones that cost them the extra points that knocked them out of 105. So please trust yourself. When you end the exam, you're going to finish the test. When you click on finish the test, you're done. You cannot go back at all. So be very, very careful. Do not click on that until you're actually done. Somebody was telling me that there was a pop-up that comes along sometime during the exam. Watch very carefully what you click on that pop-up, because there's something deceptive about it. Make sure you don't click on anything that causes you to finish. If you're not really sure what the result is by clicking on that, just walk out of the room, talk to the proctor, have them come in and look at it and say, okay, what do I do to not end the exam? So if you have that problem, do check on that. Somebody was telling me it was very deceptive and it caused her to finish it early. I told you that you have that disclosure issue and not to tell anybody about anything. When the IRS administered the exam, they sent us back our white booklet with all the questions and all of our notes and everything else with our name on it. They sent it back to us with the exam answers. We don't get that anymore. So when we had that, we were able to go back and see which ones we got wrong and file a dispute with the IRS to have them review those questions, and the IRS would review those disputes, and sometimes they would accept them and then change that answer for everybody, and a bunch more people ended up passing. You can't do that now. What you can do is what I said, let me know if there was something that was wrong or inconsistent. I'll tell you right now, we have not had a problem for the last few years. When Prometric started, we had a lot of those, and we submitted it to IRS and to them, and they changed scores several times. So people who were right on the verge did manage to end up passing, because when they change a question or eliminate a question, it affects everybody who got that question wrong. The other thing that you can do is at the end of the exam, you have about 10 or 15 minutes to answer a survey for IRS and Prometric. They read it. Okay, so if you find that you had questions that made no sense, include the information. Don't bother with the question number, because every exam has that same question, but potentially with a different question number. Put the identifying information about the person named in the question or something that will help them find the question and tell them what's wrong. Worst case, you can always write to Prometric and let them know about this and have them follow up. So there are ways, but most of the time these days when people tell me that there was something wrong and I look at the question information, Prometric got it right. I know, Mark, but if you're missed by a couple of points and you feel that one of the questions or two of the questions made no sense, that's when you want to make notes about that and let me know immediately after the exam. You're not going to remember later on. So I've told you what I do about my challenge strategy. I will definitely fight for my students. I have gotten the questions removed and reviewed and change scores. If you have registration problems with Prometric, let me know. I will try to help you. It's not as easy to help you anymore. They used to have somebody at the IRS who was dedicated to helping you, to taking care of EA candidates. He retired in July of 2022, and I have begged and begged the return prepare office to assign someone specific to us, and they have not. I am still pushing that through the issue management resolution system on a monthly basis. I'm still being a thorn in their side. I want someone assigned that you can contact directly that can help you out. So with this extra money in their budget, I told them they need to use some of that for you, especially since they raised your fee to become an EA. And I told them, if you have to pay the higher fee to become an EA in your first year, then you darn well better get some support even before passing the exam. So I'm still working on it. What do you do when you pass? Well, you're going to file a Form 23, and you can file it online or on paper. Ideally, you're going to file it online. You're going to pay it online, and that application has all of the different questions in it. So when you file online, it's also the application. And then when you actually get your EA card, it's going to look something like that. So the IRS is going to do that background check we talked to you about. They are going to focus on your tax filing and payment history. It will take about 60 days or less to get your approval. And sometimes when they're not busy, it only takes about 10 days. And then you're going to get your T card. So until the date on your card, none of the CPE that you take will count towards your EA. It will count towards the annual filing season program record of completion. But for the EA, you have to start taking continuing education from the date on your card. Again, if you've got a problem, I help my students. That's what I do. If you have questions, you want to call the return preparer office that handles the EA exam at this number. It's 855-472-5540. So those of you who think you have background issues, things that might prevent you from becoming an EA, call them before you start spending money on the study process. This is a phone number to use. And at this point, if you don't have a Social Security number, it shouldn't make a difference because you took care of that when you got your PTIN. So all of that got taken care of when you got your PTIN. And so now at this point, you're already okay. This is what that Form 23 looks like. You have, they ask you for your name, address, Social Security number, your PTIN, and if you have an employer ID number down at the bottom. One of the important things about the employer ID number is if you have been getting employer ID numbers for your clients and you've been using your Social Security number to on the application, you're going to be responsible for any of their activities. So first of all, stop using your Social Security number, use the client's. And secondly, if you used your Social Security number, you're going to need to list all of those employer ID numbers and pray that they are not in default, because that's going to reflect on you. DeSilvia wants to know if there are risks on showing your EA card to the public on social media. Yeah, absolutely. You don't want the public generally knowing your EA number. Absolutely not. There's so much identity theft and other kinds of nonsense. And you see that when you have people posting their results from the exam, they block that stuff out. Or when they're posting their certificates, they block that stuff out. That is good practice. Okay, so what else is on the exam? Do you have a centralized authorization file number? So if you ever filed a power of attorney, if you've ever filed a Form 8821 information authorization request, you might have gotten one. Not everybody has one. So If you don't have one, just say no. If you do, just enter the ones you have. Most people only have one. These are the questions about compliance. And one of the things that you see is felony tax crimes. If you've been denied a license, admission by a government department, commission, or agency to practice, or if you've been prevented from practicing and preparing returns, answer. But what question do you not see here that is often asked? The question is, have you filed bankruptcy? That's one that some of you have already asked, and it isn't on this application, so it isn't of importance. Can somebody assign a power of attorney to you without being an enrolled agent? Most likely not. There are specific instances, and when we get into the part 3 part of the exam, we'll talk about the specific instances during class about when you may be able to get an enrolled agent, when you may be able to get a power of attorney. But generally for clients, you're not going to be able to get a signed POA from them. So people are asking about study time. Okay, well, we have known people who have sat down and gone through the whole program, just watching all the classes on their own. And for instance, Tim, who is a CPA, he passed all 3 exams in as little as 6 weeks. And Ishan, who is over here, I think managed to pass it in 3 weeks, but he didn't use my class. He just did it on his own. He is quite a genius. Some people have taken years and years to be able to get the free time to study. There have been family issues, health issues, and all of the people who love you, who interfere and sabotage you. But then they come back 5 or 10 years later. They're still welcome to come back to the class and use everything. And then they pass the exam. Some of my favorite people have done that. What do you want to do if you just want to pass the exam and you don't want to learn anything? You just want to practice for the exam using those review tools, the software tools, period, and not learn. If you've got experience and training, invest at least 30 hours per exam, except for part 2, which you probably want 60 hours of answering those questions. If you only have experience preparing individual tax returns, then figure 50 hours per exam and 120 hours for part 2 and only 40 hours for part 3. And here we're just talking about using software. Lambers, Gleim, Fast Forward Academy, Passkey, any of those. If you're just trying to pass the exam, period, this is what you're going to need. If you have no experience and no education, you shouldn't be taking one of those review courses. You should be taking a course like mine, where you're actually going to learn how the tax system works, learn tax law, learn preparation, learn everything else. And in this case, if you're using my class, you want time to watch the class videos. What if you want to pass the exam and you actually want to learn something that stays with you, that improves your skills as a tax professional? You figure you're going to put in 128 class hours over 6 to 7 months, plus 72 hours of final reviews. We have 4 final review sessions for every single class. They're 4-hour final review sessions, plus at least 4 hours a week of private study or study buddy time. So you're going to make a serious investment this summer, but then you don't have to go through 4 years of college. You don't have to go through an internship with a CPA firm or law firm. You don't have to wait 5 or 6 years to get certified. You just end up getting your EA in about 6 or 8 months. And in this case, you are going to learn more than just how to pass the exam. You're going to learn how to be an amazing tax professional and make a heck of a lot of money. Let's talk about taxes. I told you earlier, if all you want is a review, then any course at all that you want to take is excellent. Okay? any course. There used to be a lot of different programs out there when we started, when Prometric started, and some of them were garbage, and they are gone. The ones that are still active and in business are fabulous. They're all very good at what they do, but they're review courses. And some of the ones in person, like NAEA, NATP, Brass Tacks, they're excellent, but they are review classes. They're like 3-day review classes. That implies you're already knowing everything, but you'll get a really good review. And many of them are cheaper, although I'm going to tell you, some of them are becoming more and more expensive. So if you actually want to learn in depth about taxes, I am going to do something for you that you're not going to get anywhere else, not in college, not anywhere else. I am going to teach you tax law. I'm going to teach you how to work with client management. I'm going to teach you tax strategy and planning, how to pass the exams, and how to make a living. Very, very important. I'm going to be able to answer your client and practice questions. We have a forum where we answer those, on a daily basis, first thing in the morning, not just EA exam questions, but client questions. If you need a mentor or a cheerleader or advisor, we are here for you. We are definitely here for you, and we work with you to help you get through stuff. You get to maintain a long-term relationship. Even after you pass the exam, you are welcome to come back, attend all of the live classes, and if you want continuing education for those classes, you can pay $10 per continuing education credit you need, but you don't have to pay to attend the classes or log in and watch the material. So you get to stay here forever. If that's what you want, then this is the only course for you, because Tax Mama is here for you. That's exactly what we are here for. Stephen said, I originally said this would be about an hour. Actually, I said an hour and a half. We're now at 2 hours, not trying to be a jerk, but how could I be so far off? Well, we've had a lot of questions, but I said the hour or hour and a half was going to be just for the information about the EA exam, and that there would be additional time afterwards to answer your questions about my class. But we got a lot of questions about my class along the way that were a little bit premature, so that ate up more time. So I do thank everybody for your patience. Lee, you already have the handout. So you have the information, and you're going to be able to watch the recording in a couple of hours. So in your handout at the very end, we have links to where you're going to find the recording. Okay? You're always going to get more than I promised. We always deliver more, because I never think I give you enough. So you're always going to get so much more from me than I ever tell you in the first place. So what are you going to get in the live class? You're going to get instant gratification. Just like here, you're going to get answers to your questions. You're going to get the answers during class, and you're going to have the answers in the video recordings and audio recordings of all of the live sessions. Most places charge a separate fee to get the recordings. This gives it to you as part of the process, and you get the long-term access. And a lot of places don't even provide audio recordings at all. So all of this is included in the premium course, and that is the only course we are offering. We're combining the premium and the self-study course into one little package. And nobody lets you stay not just until you pass, they'll let you stay until you pass, but forever. So as I say, there are people here who have passed a long time ago, and they still come back, part of it for the information and part of it for the relationship. So what are the benefits? Well, you're going to get about 80 hours of courses, live classes that will provide CPE, continuing education, for EAs, CPAs, and those annual filing season program record of completion holders. We do not provide CE for California CTAC. I apologize. All of the CPE that you're going to need to meet IRS requirements for enrolled agents and AFSPs. All live students who track attendance, the first year is included with the CPE. If you come back the next year, then you'll pay $10 an hour for the CPE that you want. For instance, there are a lot of other places to get CPE during the year. Let's say you come to all 40 or 50 classes. You don't want to pay for all of that CPE. If you only end up needing 5 or 6 more hours of CPE once you've done all of the other stuff that you've gone to, then that's all you want to pay for when you come back. So we've had people pay us for the whole thing, and we've given them back their money and said, how many other hours have you gotten? So we also try to be very ethical. Future years, as I said, you attend, you can come back forever. So we keep you updated all of the time. The bonus is we have set up special mentoring sessions on Monday and Wednesday evenings where we're working with you, answering your questions live. It's not a formal session. We're answering your questions and we're walking you through practice exams, kind of like our kind of like our final review sessions, only a little bit more informally. And so we started doing that last year. It is working really well. You don't need to attend these, but they are recorded so you can watch them later for the extra practice. The schedule, we are starting on May 2nd, and we're going to run through October. Tuesdays and Thursdays from 4 to 6 p.m. Pacific, sometimes 7, you're going to be learning taxes. You're going to be learning all about tax. You're going to have the Tax Mama Live classes Saturday mornings from 8 a.m. to noon. We're usually going to do the EA exam review. This is like all of those other programs where they sit and teach you how to answer questions and prepare you for that. That's what we do in these classes. There are 4 of them that go with every single exam part. So part 1 has 4 of these 4-hour sessions. Part 2 has 4 of these 4-hour sessions. And part 3 has 4 of these 4-hour sessions. And you have the optional self-study because every live class is recorded, and we typically manage to post them within an hour or 2 after the classes end, because Zoom gets that to us. And then we have Alex convert those classes and get us the audio version, usually that night or the next morning. So if you want purely self-study, well, you can go to My CPE to get the self-study course, but it's very different. It is very, very much less expensive, but we are not administering a self-study course at all. So what do you get? If you sign up with me, you get 2 mentoring sessions a week. You get 2 follow-up sessions every month. Once we're done with the exam study in October, we're going to get to meet twice a month, and that's completely customized. You tell me what you want me to prepare for you, what you're studying. And if you tell me, then I will create a set of questions and topics specifically related to help you pass the part of your exam that you're working on that week. I will tell you, if you don't send me anything, those sessions aren't going to happen, but you will have those mentoring sessions twice a week. Once a month, we have a live roundtable discussion where you can come in. It's usually, I think, the second Tuesday morning of the month, and you can come and talk about anything, ask about anything, or whatever. In the meantime, we have 2 places. One in the special school forum where you can get your questions answered every day. And we set up a Facebook forum where we're also answering questions in the Facebook forum. Can we keep the classes by Stephanie? I am counting on that. Absolutely. Is Tuesday and Thursday repeat of Saturday? It's in addition. Absolutely. Every single class is different. We do not have repeats. Remember, I told you I don't like to repeat myself. That gets boring. So we buy stuff for you, okay? As part of the money that you pay us for the class, we buy you the Gleim test bank. It's normally $380. We buy you the Lambers test bank, normally $233 per part. We buy you my book, Small Business Taxes Made Easy, and we buy you the Tax Book Online Web Library. We buy you all of this stuff that would normally cost you more than $1,000 to buy yourself. What is the difference between Lambers and Gleim? Well, Gleim, big advantage, is one of the oldest companies around. When I was teaching at UCLA, I was using their little blue book. But Gleim's test mode, as I told you, looks exactly like the exam, so it's excellent. And Gleim's answers to their questions, sometimes they're a little bit hard to understand if you don't already have a college degree. They speak at that level, and I've heard some people complain about that, but the books that come with the class, and they have a print book option, and you can pay extra a little bit for the print, but the online version comes with my order. That's pretty darn good. It's a pretty helpful book. The Lambers test back is something that I developed because I have had problems and complaints with everybody's presentation in the industry. And one of the things that always bothered me is, and I fought with Gleim about this too, is the way they presented the math problems. They would answer the math problems or explain them in paragraphs. And you know how hard it is to try to read numbers in the middle of a paragraph? So we set it up with Lambers where all of those math problems are laid out looking like math, so you can see the clean calculation right there. So that's the first really big improvement that I made. The second is every single question, the answer to every single question has links to the tax code or the publication or any reference. So if you're reading an answer and you don't totally understand it, you can you can click on the link and go directly to the source, to the publication, the tax code, revenue ruling, whatever it is, so that you can get more in-depth information. So we have made Lambers a really useful research tool. So that is excellent. The links are right there, part of it. If you take a couple of weeks off for work or vacation, it's not that hard to get caught up with the classes because everything is recorded. And you're going to get the schedule for the class because we are going to take breaks in June when I have to go to the CSTC tax symposium. And we're going to have a break between part 2 and part 3 for about 2.5 weeks. So if you schedule your vacations during our breaks, you won't miss a thing. And the Taxbook Web Library that we get you now is going to be good until December 1st of 2024. After that, you would have to renew that on an annual basis. If you sign up a year ago, will I be able to use Gleim, Lambers, and Taxbook Online Web Library? If you signed up last year, Debbie, you should have access to Lambers as long as you need it. The Taxbook Web Library will expire December 1st of this year, but we did not have Gleim last year. So if you want to buy Gleim, there is an order link, so you can buy that at a very deep discount. So you can use either Gleim or Lambers. People who signed up before February 28th, they got the Fast Forward Academy software, which is excellent. It just doesn't let me use the teaching tools that I need. So they're still working with us. They're still wonderfully cooperative, and tech support from them is excellent. So these are the things that you end up getting. You get all of these tools that we buy for you. You get to join the Facebook group. You get to meet study buddies. You get answers to your questions about the exam, about taxes, and client-related questions, and anything else. So Sheila says, I can't make 4 to 6 classes. I'll be doing the course as self-study. You can do half the course that way. Don't worry about it. When you get back home from whatever you're doing, you can, if you don't mind, you can watch it after in the evening after you get home. Some people like listening to my voice, and people with babies, the babies like my voice. I cannot tell you how many babies I've put to sleep. So how do the classes work? They start 5 minutes after the hour. So if we're starting at 4, we're starting at 4:05. We take a break. Sometimes we'll take a break after 1 hour. Usually not, but on Saturdays, we will take 2 breaks. So that's perfectly okay. Every class is recorded. Let me repeat that for like the 10th time. Every single class is recorded. You get the video, you get the audio, and you get the written handout. So every single medium. The handouts are usually available by noon on the day of each class. So if we're teaching a class on Tuesday, by noon on Tuesday, you'll be able to download the handout. For the Saturday classes, the handouts will be ready for you by noon on Friday, so you are able to still print them out while you're at work. And within 48 hours or less after the class, we'll have the video and the audio and the chat file. These chat files are saved. And then you're able to download these sessions pretty much on any device you have. You can download it on your portable player. You can download it on the audios on the phone. You can work out and listen to them while you're doing laundry. People have been working out, listening, and basically losing weight, which I'm very jealous of. And you can replay everything as often as you want. There is no limit to how many times you can replay. Do the classes expire after a year? Tabitha wants to know. They don't expire, but I replace last year's classes with this year's classes. If I use last year's video, how will I know if there are changes? Well, if you're going to use last year's video, Della, you have to also download or watch the session for the tax update from last December, because that shows all of the changes that affect this year. So if you want to do that in conjunction, that will help you know what else you need to know before we get to those classes. So these are the class materials. Before class, you're going to get the PDF file. Just like today, you'll get full-page slides. It'll have 3 different files. You'll get full-page slides, 2-page slides, and three slides to a page with the fillable notes that Ishan created for you. We have a bunch of different cheat sheets and templates that you can use as we go along, and sometimes students create them. We've got special tools to help you study. We have client forms, intake sheets, templates, and tools to help you build your own practice. Again, please don't send me direct questions. Ernest wants the premium, but the schedule doesn't work for you because you work at night and my days off are Sunday and Monday. Well, as I said, everything is recorded. So everything is recorded. What are the class times in Central Time? Add 2 hours to Pacific Time. So this is the only EA prep course that provides all of the 15 CEs to get the annual filing season program record of completion. This is the only one that will also provide you with the 2 hours of ethics. And we provide all of the hours that you need for the EA and CPA, we're NASBA approved, and the annual filing season program record of completion for anybody who attends and answers questions during the live class. But one of the things I'm doing this year is for people who missed the live classes but still need some continuing education credit, let me know and I will put you into my self-study system so you can pick up the continuing education credit there. Otherwise, you don't need that system at all because everything is recorded. So you can just watch it without any problems. You've got some questions, Donald. How can you reach me after this class? Use that link. Lulu, can you please put up the link to ask a question? Okay. One of the things that we're going to teach you is your different learning styles. Everybody has a different way to learn. And I've had students coming into my class who have been trained by teachers and in regular schools and stuff to believe they were imbeciles. And you know what? They weren't. They just had a different way of learning. And one of the huge, huge benefits of not being in a classroom and being able to work from home is if you're restless, you can move around, you can dance, you can sing, you can do whatever you want, and you're not bothering some, stiff-laced teacher. But we're going to teach you what your particular learning style is so you know what it is you need to do that is unique to you. So we're going to help you capitalize on that. Sometimes people can't study alone and they want some help with staying on target. We help you with study buddies and help you connect with each other. Some people prefer to study alone. They move faster that way. We're going to point you to study halls and tools that you can use for free for people who want to study with each other. Although these days, if you use Zoom, you have no problem. And we're going to give you some tangible tips on how to study together. I can tell you all kinds of testimonials. We've had a lot of people say wonderful things about the class, including some of the people who are here today. For instance, Tom said he's taken many, many lectures and he can't remember any being as good as my presentations. I like flattery. You have an excellent style that makes learning and retention much easier. I'm going to tell you a little secret. The course got audited by the IRS last year. And I have in writing from the IRS continuing education auditor, his evaluation at the end. He said that he has never seen a course as good as this that provides as much training and as much information. We posted that into Facebook at the time in our class Facebook forum. I'm still blushing. The guy was just so nice. I've never had an auditor just go out of their way to be so nice. But yeah, we have other people who say they passed. I'm awesome. I like being awesome. The courses are incredible. They taught me everything I needed to know, and I couldn't have done it without you. And Susan Holdgrief, who runs a Vita site in Pennsylvania, she teaches farmers and international business. And he actually had some farming clients, and Susan's classes helped him with those. And like Brent is saying, Linnell said she just wanted to start learning taxes to help her husband understand the taxes for his trucking business. Instead, she is turning her business into a virtual accounting and tax business and working with a lot of the other truckers. So she has a particular niche that she learned how to use. And so we have more people. One thing that Victor said is, he'll never forget one of the stories I told. Take care of your clients. I've taken clients for up to 3 years and not charged them at all until they get back on their feet. And that's something I've done. I don't want my clients to not file if they're having problems. It's something that I've always taken personally. I will not let my clients get into trouble. That's why I have the relationship with people who won't go away for 30 years. But that's what Victor's family would call tzedakah. It's like a mitzvah. So Brett, he wants to know if this course will qualify as a business expense. Possibly. And we'll have to go into some of the specifics privately. What is the price to enroll? Well, first of all, the guarantee, if you don't pass, you stay in the class until you pass, no matter how long it takes, and you only pay for the extra continuing education. But I will tell you this, I do have the right to reject anybody if they are rude and disruptive. We have people from all over the world. with all kinds of different backgrounds and languages and religions and politics. And I think that is a beautiful, wonderful thing. And I want to keep that warmth and friendship, and I want people to get to know each other's cultures. I will not stand for meanness. So if we have nastiness, you're just out of the class. We've been doing this class online in this version since 2004, and we've only ever had to kick 2 people out. And I am so proud that our students are so wonderful and never have that issue.